Okay, we're going to jump in here with a full review of the ASICS Megablast. Can't be missing out on the hype train here. I actually had a first impressions video planned, but I enjoyed it so much I just decided I'd do all 85Ks of my training week, plus a run from last week as well to get it up to the 100K mark as soon as possible and then share my full thoughts there. So here we are, full review as always. We're going to go through top to bottom, we'll chat about the price and then some comparisons here, although in this case it is a little bit tricky to find anything which really compares to this one. As you all probably know, this is a very good shoe. So yeah, we're going to get straight into it. Starting off with the specs on this one, we have a 45mm stack in the heel, 8mm drop, which is matched to the Superblast. Key difference here is though that we have a new midsole foam called Flight Foam Turbo Squared, which is an aliphatic TPU, which is the same compound type as what you're going to find in the Tokyo series, which is escaping me right now. Somewhere here it is. Although this is a very different formulation. I've heard it suggested that they are made in separate factories, this being a fair bit softer, more compliant, and this being quite a firm, punchy foam underfoot. Definitely, you can kind of feel the same sensations in terms of resilience and the bounce that you get back, but they are, quite different in terms of their tuning, I guess, to be a little bit more structured compared to a bit more squishy and explosive in the racing shoes. Weight-wise, in my men's size 10.5 with that big stack, quite a wide base of support. I've got 248 grams, which is a 15 gram improvement on the Superblast 2, which was already an impressively light shoe for the stack height. And it brings it down to a little bit lighter than most speed trainers, but not quite race weight, I would say, for my size, which would usually be about 220 grams. In terms of the upper of this shoe, I think it's probably my least favorite part about this model, but I do think it does enough to get by. It's quite a thin, scratchy race mesh material, which is the same throughout, so no real overlays, no real added structure other than the heel counter itself, which is quite lovely. It's probably my favorite part about the upper is the amount of padding that we get in and around there, and a good deal of structure too. But everything else about it feels a little bit half done. I think we have the same tongue here as what you do in the Superblast, but the ankle collar, the edges of it with that firmer race mesh just feel a little bit harsh wrapping up the ankle, and the lacing up experience is just not quite as nice as what you get in some of the other shoes out there right now. For a $340 shoe, I'm not sure that this quite matches up to the premium experience, but then again, in terms of weight saving and keeping things stripped down and simple, I can respect it, but I do think there would be a better way to go about this in terms of keeping the weight down, but also still holding on to some comfortable elements. I found the lockdown to be pretty easy to find. I did find that I slid forward a little bit in this shoe, which led me to want to use the second eyelet in the ankle collar here instead of the top one. So giving myself a bit more purchase on the ankle collar to bring it around and keep my foot in the shoe. I did feel like the tongue was almost sitting a little bit more forward than I would like, so that was a way that I could kind of keep it back closest to my ankle and get the fit that I wanted. The lockdown through the midfoot, to be fair though, was quite easy with these serrated laces, and overall I was pretty happy with how things settled down, how I was strapped down onto the midsole. In terms of the fit, I found it to be a little bit snug. I would say that this is not a standard fit in my opinion. I think it's a little bit more dialed in, a little bit low volume through the end of the midfoot getting into the forefoot. I had the sensation of a short fit because of the way that the upper materials maybe kind of press down a little bit, or maybe even taper in just a touch on my big toe. So although I've gone for a 10.5 here, which is usually very safe for Western brands, I did get some big toe awareness on my long run, which I just got back from, and a few of my other runs when I didn't lace this shoe up as tightly as I needed to. So that was a priority, was making sure that I laced up enough that my foot didn't slide forward and I didn't get that sensation of shortness. But I do think that does come down to the actual shape opposed to the actual lockdown in the ankle by itself. So this is not a wide foot friendly shoe. If you need extra width and you want this style of shoe, the Superblast 2 is probably going to be more suited. But for everyone else, this is one to take with a bit of caution. I wouldn't go jumping straight into this if you've ever had issues with the sizing and width of shoes. But I would say most standard width feet should be okay. I would definitely go true to size. I wouldn't be half sizing down. This is one to try on in store if you get the opportunity to, because it is obviously quite expensive. Overall for me, as I said, this is still probably my least favorite part of this shoe. It's not terrible. I don't hate it. It's not doing enough to drive me away, but I do think that given the success of the uppers in the past, it is a bit weird to see it kind of go a little bit backwards. And I think for the price of this shoe, I do expect a little bit better. I think if they were going to improve it, we would look for a mesh which is a little bit more comfortable on foot, a little bit less scratchy, a little bit less plasticky, and I would like to see a bit more of an accommodating fit through the end of the toe box. I really don't like it when brands do this lateral swoop on the side of the toe box. It just doesn't seem to work for anybody. We need to be moving more towards the Nike Zoom Fly 6, which is somewhere here. I might dig it out actually. The Nike Zoom Fly 6 as an all-rounder trainer, something that you would want to spend a long time on foot in, I think is the perfect fit and kind of last. They've got this nice rounded shape with a good deal of volume. It's not so wide that you're going to be sliding around, but it does just have a rounded shape, which I think is going to accommodate more feet. It kind of frustrates me because, as we'll soon hear, I think this midsole is probably one of the most accommodating, versatile, democratic feels that I've tried. And so it feels a little bit strange to then be isolating it because of the fit, which should just be a little bit of an afterthought. So yeah, for me, upper's not my favorite part. It's doing enough to get by, but watch the fit if you have a bit of a wide foot. Moving down to the midsole, this is where things get fantastic. Aliphatic TPU, pure slab, no plates, just a nice wide stable base. This is one of the best training shoes that I've ever tried. Probably the best that I've tried. I do think this is just doing things which other shoes are just not getting close to. For me, this is the perfect all-rounder. It's a shoe which I can happily use for my long runs, my daily runs, my easy runs. I can get into tempo pace, marathon pace, probably push it to half marathon threshold, I would say, and I think I could feel pretty happy. The only thing that I would say this shoe doesn't have absolutely wrapped up is those highest pace sprint intervals. At that point, I'm probably going to want something which feels a bit more nimble underfoot and doesn't have the kind of bulk associated with it. But even then, that is more of a sensation thing. I just like to feel more nimble. I'm probably going to lean more towards a Velocity Nitro 4 for something like that compared to the Megablast. But even then, this shoe could move at those paces in a decent enough way. I think that this is the all-rounder which does the best at each of its jobs. Oftentimes when people say all-rounder, you kind of take it with a grain of salt because it means that it might not be the fastest, it might not be the most comfortable. There's something that's kind of missing in that puzzle. Here, they've just covered everything off really, really well. The aliphatic TPU is punchy. It's got this kind of bottomless bounce where you don't really feel the ground at all. It kind of feels like you get halfway through the foam and then you get this really quick, immediate turnaround and it punches you back out. The sensation is not far away from the original Super Blast, but I think it feels more meaty. I think the bounce has more depth to it. The Super Blast 2, I should leave this for the comparisons, but the Super Blast 2, I sometimes felt could be a little bit hollow, like you weren't getting down into the foam as deeply as I wanted, or it wasn't having the same response back. It was more of a shell. This feels like a nice, meaty, juicy slab of foam, which really encourages you to pick your feet up, turn the legs over. Almost to its detriment, sometimes it can feel a little bit like it's egging you on to push the pace when you don't really need to, but it is just such a fun ride. It's also extremely stable. The surface area underfoot is very comparable to the Super Blast 2. It's very wide, and with the narrow upper, although I'm not a huge fan, your foot does have a good splay of foam either side, which is going to prevent you from going too far either way. The foam resilience also plays into that stability. You're not going to be able to over compress it, I would say, in a way which is going to throw you around like a super shoe would. So I can see this being a fantastic first time marathon racing shoe option as well. Even a more experienced marathoner could honestly pick this shoe up and feel pretty happy. It's got everything that you need for all training runs, and it's going to do a really good job as well. My favorite run, I would say, has definitely been the long run. Just got back from 18.5 Ks, just running through the city, a little bit of elevation, and it just felt so easy to get rolling. This is that perfect shoe for when you feel good and you want to push into that kind of, I guess some people would say, the no man's land, the gray zone, zone 3, when you're pushing just up, just underneath kind of tempo zones because you feel fresh, you feel fun. This is the perfect shoe to get that going. You're going for a long run with mates, you want to kind of kick on a little bit. This is where a shoe like this really comes into it. It just seems to get better as the run goes on. Starts a little bit firmer, a little bit punchier. As things go, it starts to soften a touch. And then by the end, you've got this really nice, smooth kind of, punch through, which just keeps things fresh, I think is the best word. Legs feel fantastic. I've done a full week of running in it now, and every run has just been an absolute joy. Bit of a side tangent here. This is what I think all brands should be doing. We should be getting a nice big slab of their super foam, give it to us with no plates, no cutouts, simple rocker, wide base, just keep things plain, but let the super foam speak for itself. Tune it a little bit firmer for sure. I don't want a big slab of Incredi-Run just kind of compressing all over the place. I want something a little bit firmer, but just let us have that punch, that excitement in a nice big slab. Do a big version, do a smaller version with 35mm. You've got your daily trainer sorted, your max cushion shoe, make it into a more lightweight, snappy package, maybe with a plastic plate for a little bit of extra stiffness if you need it. And then you've got a 3-shoe rotation plus a racer, which is pretty much all you need in my opinion. Brands should be using their super foams more. I love that Puma's using it. I love that ASICS is doing it, but I want to see it across the board. We've got Puma using it in their cheapest shoe, ASICS using it in their top end. I want to see a brand that comes out that, says stuff it. Let's just do it in terms of stack height. Go from your entry level to standard daily, high cushion daily, which I guess would be the Megablast, and then just call it a day. I don't think we need all of these weird combinations of EVA and plates and different formulations all the time. Like, it is good to have variation for sure, but sometimes I think it's just overcomplicated. Just give us the super foam, give us the good stuff, because we know it's not that expensive to produce. $340 for this when we have aliphatic TPU in a $180 shoe. We know it's not that expensive, but yeah, that could definitely be happening soon. So I'm waiting for some brand to call the bluff and just do it. I guess Adidas have already kind of done it with the Evo SL. They've kind of shown us that you can give us a nice big slab. So yeah, I just want to see this trend continued because it is just a lot of fun. So yeah, overall for me, the Megablast absolutely lives up to the hype which has been flowing throughout YouTube and across the internet. I think it does. It's just fantastic, punchy, lightweight, resilient, stable, just everything that you need. So many different use cases as well. I'd be recommending this to people as a first-time marathon shoe because it's stable, it's punchy, it's lightweight, it's got the fun factor. Oftentimes, recommendations for first-time marathon shoes are just boring. I think that this has a use case there. I think it could be a dedicated long run shoe if you want to savor it for that end of the week. It could be an all-rounder if you're someone who just doesn't really care that much about shoes and you just want something which is fun. Could just be that treat, I guess, if you're someone who's just getting into running, you hate it. This is a shoe that you could chuck on and just get through your 1 or 2 runs a week and feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. I think if you need a shoe like this to get out the door, you should just jump straight into it. So yeah, for me, banger, absolute shoe of the year for me so far. It's not going to be any surprises when we get to the end of the year. Really fantastic stuff from ASICS. Coming around to the outsole, we've actually got a fairly light coverage here on the bottom of the shoe. Horseshoe of rubber through the forefoot, little signature pod there, and then a nice kind of, I guess, outline on the back half there. Really like the grip so far. It's been fantastic. I've taken this on some gravel roads, bit of wet footpaths, and it's handled itself fantastically. I was expecting to get a little bit of damage on the exposed foam here. I've probably done about 20 Ks total on some gravel roads now, and it hasn't shown any sign of damage at all. There is a little bit of discoloration, as you can see, bit of grass too, but overall, I'm actually really impressed with how it's held up so far. The grip is very sticky itself, and I think this exposed foam is going to hold up nicely. I'm going to expect around 800 Ks at least before the sole falls apart. But obviously, if you kind of hit the shoe a bit harder, you're really hammering this outside edge. Maybe you could get through it a bit quicker, but I'm going to say general rule, I'm expecting pretty good durability here. Aliphatic TPU as well has a good reputation as lasting really well. Sure, it does degrade a little bit over time, but it's not going to get to the point of feeling flat as quickly as PIVA or EVA. So I do think I'm going to expect, at least a good 800 Ks before this shoe becomes dull or I don't really want to run it anymore. At this rate, I think I could do that pretty quickly. Going to have to restrain myself because I do have other shoes to review. Coming around to the price point here in Australia, this comes in at $340, which for context is $20 more than the Superblast 2. And that's a fair bit of cash. It's one of the more expensive shoes on the market right now, especially as a trainer. Obviously racing shoes for us getting towards $400 pretty consistently. $340 though, I think for once is actually worth it. On the current market at least, I do think that this is probably the best blend of versatility, comfort, performance, and price point and durability kind of paired in together, I do think it delivers at that price point the quality of ride that you would expect, and I think its range of use cases really do justify it for now. I do think there is potential in the future for some brands, especially Puma, with aliphatic already kind of seeping through the lineup, to undercut them and go for a similar style shoe with a similar level of versatility. But until that happens, this is top dog, and $340 I think is probably acceptable to kind of get it out the door. The range of runs that this can do, with how good it felt and with how long I expect it to last, $340 is getting the tick of approval for now. I do think it is probably best bang for buck at that price range. Getting into a couple of comparisons to round things out, I've got two shoes here which I think are similar in style, and then I've got two which I think are similar in use case. Start off with the ones which I think actually remind me of the Megablast. That is firstly the Superblast 2. Obviously 45mm, 8mm drop, similar punchy foams, wide base of support. The Megablast is kind of modeled off the Superblast. Obviously it does feel like an upgrade to me, so bouncier foam, more depth to the compression that you get, a little bit more gutsy, a little bit more meaty underfoot, whereas the Superblast always felt a little bit hollow in my opinion. I was a medium fan of this shoe. I got around it, I enjoyed it when I wore it, but I never felt addicted to it like some people did. I think the key differences are definitely the level of bounce, the kind of speed that you get, the Superblast feeling just a little bit more consistent, a little bit more stable, and maybe a little bit less dynamic for me. The upper is another point of difference. I think the quality of the upper in the Superblast 2 is definitely higher. The scratchiness here, the narrow toe box, I think could drive some people away, could be the decider between the two. But other than that, I do think the Megablast has got the Superblast covered for bounce, propulsion, versatility, that kind of fun feel. And I don't think there's any real difference in stability or structure either, other than the kind of feel, I guess. This kind of feels a bit more stable because you're not getting as much bounce, but in terms of the direction and its resistance to kind of rolling around, I do think both are pretty similar, maybe a touch more stable in the Superblast. If the Superblast 2 was to continue to exist in its current form, I don't think there's a need for both of them in their same lineup. I think the Megablast is just a better shoe compared to the Superblast. But knowing that this is going to get updated with a flight foam late foam and be a bit more soft and comfortable and cruisy, I guess, I can see how these shoes could exist with this being a bit more performance orientated, a long run shoe, tempo shoe, which you could take to race distances compared to perhaps more of an elevated daily training experience. I do think there is merit there, but right now, if you're deciding between the two of them, I would say that the Megablast is a better shoe. The other one is the Topo Athletic Spectre 2, which I don't think is quite on the same level as the Megablast, but I do think it has quite a similar style in terms of a broader base, a slight rock ring in the geometry, firmer foam, firmer forefoot as well, despite the fact that it is unplated due to the firmer foam, but also the positioning of the rubber, which resists that kind of flex due to the stretch of it on the material. Really enjoyed this shoe. I do think it feels a little bit less protective than the Megablast. Doesn't have that kind of deep booming bounce, but I do think there is enough similarities that if you identified with the Spectre 2, you could have a kind of clue about what I enjoy in the Megablast. This does have a better, roomier fit, so could be an alternative if this just feels far too narrow for you. The only real caveat is that I found the outsole on the Spectre to be a touch fragile, I would say. I bore through the outside edge of rubber pretty quickly, and the same goes for past versions also. Just seem to get through a little bit quicker than I would like, so that is something to note. If you're going for the Megablast, doesn't work out, Spectre 2 could be one to look out for, I guess, if you can't get your hands on the Superblast 2. There are a fair few other shoes which could fit into this conversation of versatile all-rounder, which can go from easy days all the way up to racing. There's a heap to chat about, and there will be more like the Rebellion Flash 3, but I want to chat about two of my favorites so far, which have been the Zoomfly 6 and the Evo SL. Zoomfly 6 has similarities in terms of the level of protection, slight rock ring through the forefoot, stiffness through the forefoot as well. This is plated. Megablast is just doing it due to the properties of the foam and the tension that it's getting on the rubber, which I think is kind of resisting through the stretch that you're getting there on the foam. For myself, I found that the Zoomfly 6 was a fantastic long run shoe. Could get up into tempo zones pretty happily, but it just didn't feel as special as the Megablast. You can definitely use this for similar purposes, but this feels more like a smooth, comfortable ride compared to a bouncy, energetic, propulsive one. I really like this shoe. I think that it has its place with a roomier fit as well. But right now the Megablast is just that step up. A little bit smoother, a little bit more soft and normal feeling. This is just life of the party, super shoe bounce in a daily trainer. I think the Evo SL is quite similar in terms of the foam properties, that kind of firmer, more structured feel, which makes it perfect for everything from long runs to faster runs. When you need the resilience to kind of keep up, punching into the road, it just keeps on giving back. I think the difference here though is that the level of response that you get versus the pace is a bit different between the two. So for the Megablast, it feels like you're getting the same amount of energy return no matter what pace you're pushing. You do get more return back the more that you push into it, but it feels more like a kind of 1-to-1 ratio. Whereas in the Evo SL, I do think your odds get a little bit better the more that you push. So ticking along at easy day pace, I don't think it gives back a heap, but then pushing into tempo zones, I do think it really starts to respond and get a little bit more equal with the Megablast. This feels a bit more dense. This feels a little bit more light and airy and punchy. You just don't really know where the energy is coming from here, whereas you really do put in the work for the Evo SL, and it kind of feels like you get the right amount back. This feels a bit more intuitive. This feels more like a super shoe. A little bit more rocket here compared to the late stage tip forward from the Megablast, which is still a rocket shoe for sure, but this feels more rolling. This feels more like a kind of tip forward at the last moment combined with the punch from the foam. For me, I think that $240 doesn't really do the Evo SL justice. I obviously am really happy that it's selling for that price point, but if we had to really stack them up in terms of value terms, this being worth $340, I stand by it. I think right now that does make sense. But if I had to compare to what the Evo SL could be, I reckon $290 versus $340 would be the appropriate value kind of difference between the two. So therefore, Evo SL I think is better value for money, but that doesn't mean that the Megablast doesn't live up to its price point. Two things can be true at the same time. Better value, better shoe, still living up to its price point. So yeah, bringing that all together, the ASICS Megablast has got to be one of the best shoes that I've ever tried. Probably the best in terms of that all-rounder protective daily trainer. Fantastic shoe. The only gripe I've had so far is that upper, but everything else has just been perfect. Gonna really struggle to not use this continuously for the rest of the year. Other shoes to try on, but that last week of running was a whole lot of fun. If you get the opportunity to try this on, really encourage you to do it. Fantastic stuff from ASICS. This is an absolute game changer.